Let's go. Page Chav Tes. Yoshev Ohel. The line that begins with the word Rachamana Karya. The issue at hand is that there is this syndrome. Page Chav Tes. There is a syndrome of inconsistency, which means in English hypocrisy, where we believe and we don't necessarily practice. Our behavioral lives do not reflect our faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I believe in the Eibishter, but I don't believe enough in him to do what he says. So of course, bepashtus, we're talking about a thief. A guy breaks and enters, digs a tunnel, baba Machtarta. He's breaking and entering, and as the Rashi brings, and the author writes it in his letter, he's even, if need be, he'll even Rachamana murder, kill. And he davens to the Eibishter to help him because he believes enough in the Eibishter to ask the Eibishter for help, but doesn't believe in the Eibishter that much. He should actually do what the Eibishter says. So of course you say it's the other guy, right? That guy is a hypocrite. Me, I'm a tzaddik. So the Rebbe says, don't get excited. And he gives an example from a businessman who gives a lot of tzedakah, and he gets a lot of joy from giving tzedakah. And because he's giving tzedakah, he knows that sof kol sof, the Rebbe is going to pay him back, like it says in the Gemara, based on the pasuk, b'chanuni no b'zois. This you can test me. You can test me about tzedakah. And nevertheless, when the guy has a little bit of a drop, he panics. He says, no, I can't give tzedakah. Why? I only earned $100 million this year, not 125. So I'm poor. I'm poor. It's very. I have brothers who are shluchim, and that's really how it works. The mindset of the people is not how much money you have in my pocket. It's how I feel about the money I have in my pocket. And then, of course, the Rebbe has the word tachbules. That's the word that the Maimonim always use. I mean, schemes, tricks, methods of manipulating, of trying to do things that are excessive and unnecessary. So the Rebbe says, just like we spoke 2 days ago, that the businessman believes in the Eibishter, does what the Eibishter says, and nevertheless, when the going gets tough, he loses his grip on how he's supposed to behave according to the Torah. So the Rebbe says, happens to Yeshiva Bachar as well. People who study Torah all day and all night. Now, people who study Torah all day and all night are very lucky, like me. You know what it says in Hayim that people study Torah all day and all night? It's a funny thing, but it's a true thing. It's harder for them to see God in their lives. A business person, a person in the so-called real world, because of the realities of life, he or she is more exposed to Ashgacha Pratis. He sees it. It's a fact. And the more you're on the edge of the real world, meaning the more you're involved in, let's do for lack of words, in taking risks and gambling in the real world, you see the Eibishter's hand more. The Ben Teda, his life is very, very fixed. It's not very variable in terms of Gashmias, in terms of the real world. So it's harder for him to see the Eibishter, right? But in his little box, in his little world of holiness, he can also have this syndrome of I believe in the Eibishter enough to know who he's there, but I don't believe in the Eibishter that much to know that I have to live in his spirit. And he gives you the example. Shamayim, the person believes, I'm reading it inside, please look inside. Torah is in fact God's wisdom and God's will. Right, so now, if I am learning Torah and I believe that Torah comes from the Eibishter, the very fact that I understand any of it is an unbelievable miracle. It says in my Mother Chassidus, I think the Rebbe says it also in the Sicha B'Shpatim, that the truth of the matter is we shouldn't understand one single word of Torah. Because God's smarter than us from being able to understand. It's one of the great matanis.
For us.
That's right. The matan Torah, the gift of Torah, was the fact that we should be able to understand any of it. So the person, I want you to know, I knew a Jew who's now deceased. Somebody asked me about him and he broke my heart. You know why he broke my heart? Because it made me realize how long this man has God. When I got married, there was a man who worked in Mechon Chal. His name was Harav Shmuel Levi Yitzchak Vadavsky. You know what his name was? Shmuel Levi Yitzchak ben Levi Yitzchak. He was named after his own father, and his father passed away between his birth and his bris. A person should die between the birth of your child and your bris. That's pretty tragic. And I met a man who was his uncle, who survived for many years, who says, that week, my brother died, his son had a bris, and I had my bar mitzvah. And he came to speak in his yahrzeit. He was much older than his nephew, and he survived him. So I met him at one of the yahrzeit gatherings. He was like the Zayd of Machtarta. The girls loved him. He had a very soft touch about him. It was very easy to talk to him. And he sat Machtarta all day. That was his job. And the girls absolutely, they get a lot from him. Unfortunately, he died more than 20 years ago. That on Vav Tishrei, the Rebbe's mother's yahrzeit. He worked for Machon Chani, he passed away in the Rebbe's mother's yahrzeit. So Rabbi Wadowski had a very interesting life. He was a Chai Berlin, he learned in Rabbi Hutner's yeshiva, Chai Berlin, which is a Litvish yeshiva. Then he got involved with the Kloisenberger Rebbe, he became like a Kloisenberger Chassid. Then he got involved in the Skelener Rebbe, who lived in Crown Heights, he became a Skelener Chassid, and then he fell into the sinkhole. He became a Lubavitcher. He actually moved to Crown Heights. Rabbi Wadowski actually moved to Crown Heights. And Rabbi Wadowski told me that his approach to life was, he didn't go away, he took along. When he got from Rabbi Hutner, he took. When we got to Kloisenberg, he didn't drop. In other words, he collected from different Gedolim, and he was the composite of all the influences he had in his life. See, he had a lot of beautiful things about the Kloisenberg Rebbe. The Kloisenberg was an extraordinary man. He was really a Gadol B'Yisrael, a emes of Gadol B'Yisrael. Not just in Torah, he was a real Manig Yisrael. He was a special Yid. And so when he was in Kloisenberg, he heard a story. When the Kloisenberg, he was a Gaon Oil, Kloisenberg knew Anashir Torah. When the Kloisenberg Rebbe was a young man, he was living in some shtetl, someplace in Galicia, I'm assuming, or Hungary, and he was learning a Besmedish. At night, the Besmedish would close, they'd close the lights, and people went to sleep. The shamus lives next door to the shul. The shamus wakes up in the middle of the night, and he hears noise from the shul. So he grabs a lantern, he runs into the shul, he looks around, it's quiet, it's clean, it's neat, nobody broke it, he went back to sleep. Anyway, he hears noise again. After 3 or 4 times, he found the source. The Kloisenberg Rebbe was laying on the floor under a table in the dark and saying, he was moaning, Master of the world, I want to understand your holy Torah. That's the story. In other words, he was a smart guy, Kloisenberg Rebbe. He had a higher IQ than you and I. And he worked very, very hard. But he prayed. You want to understand the Torah, you have to ask the Eibusha. The Eibusha will help. And I'm looking at the Eibusha. Understand? That's the story. So this is what he's saying here. He believes that the Torah is the wisdom and the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm reading inside, Shimshon Agir, page Chavtes. When you have the page, I'll tell you the line. Please look inside. And when he succeeds in his learning, and he has strength, he has success, he boasts. Look at me, I'm a Talmud Chacham. Or a friend of mine says, I'm a Talmud Chomas. It's a joke. Talmud Chacham. Now, the crime is, if the Eibishter gave us a schiyah, that we learned Torah, we understood it's a matana. Was halt ich sich groß? Why do I consider myself great to understand Torah? If it's Hashem's Torah. And I really shouldn't understand anything because we're talking about the Eibishter. And he gave me, in addition to giving me the Torah, he even gave me the gift that I could understand it. So why do I feel special that I understood it? The Eibishter gave it to me. I'm on the page Chavtes, the line that begins with the word tzarich.
Well, you can't say because the Eibishter gave it to you. You wouldn't just give it to a random guy.
Good answer. Good answer. But the Rebbe doesn't like that answer. This is particularly pronounced. If the only reason you're learning is that you should be able to say, I know what the next guy. So if you boast that you're a Talmud Chacham, it's already a lack of sense that Hashem gave you the Torah. If the only reason you're learning is you should become a Talmud Chacham, so the whole business is what they call Kardem Lachtach, it's to serve you. By the way, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, this is the Rebbe's Maimer. It's our Rebbe's Maimer. The Rebbe has no problem, just learn Torah. In our generation, whatever it takes. But if you're on a high enough madrege, if you bezagt in Yiddish, es passt nicht. There's a tape of the Rebbe where the Rebbe is verbrenging in the early years. And he never spoke that way in my generation because there's no one to talk to. But the Rebbe is talking about madreges and bittel. And he's pushing crying, you know. You learn Torah and you're not bittel enough. And higher and higher and higher and higher. In other words, the Rebbe is speaking in those early years like as if he's talking to Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe, you know, who are expected to be holding in the holiest and the highest and the purest levels. But that's what this Maimed is saying. If a person learns Torah and he boasts, or he learns for the purposes of being able to boast, teugnisht. If the idea is that I'm the smart guy, sometimes you'll bend it. He should win the argument. No, you get involved in a situation. When you get involved in a situation, in other words, you have an argument with somebody else, being right becomes more important than what the truth is. I tell you this, guys, all the time. This is my childhood experience. I'm a sincere person, okay? But I'm not a smart person. I'm not smart, I'm not intelligent. When it comes to common sense, I'm the last one to figure things out. I'm not smart in that way. When I was a bocher, I learned, I didn't waste my time. But I was always arguing with people. Arguing my chavris, everything was an argument. Now part of the reason because I wanted to understand, but part of the reason because I really did not know how to listen. I like to believe that now I'm able to listen. It's probably also not true, you know. If I meet the right guy, in other words, someone who knows as much as I do or is in my class and we would get into an argument, I'd probably get stuck. But it's such a stupid thing. It's such a foolish idea. You have a chavrusa, you're learning Gemara, you're learning Tisa. You have hours and hours. Yeshiva Bach's got all day to learn. It's a very, very special opportunity. Trust me, I don't have all day to learn. It's a very special opportunity. You can sit and learn all day long. And you're learning with your chavrusa, and you're learning a Taisvis, and you're arguing about where to put the comma, and according to what the pshat and Taisvis is, and you're screaming at each other. Why? I'm right. Would you stop screaming? Listen. And the greatest thing that can happen to me is that when I'm wrong, I'll say, you know what? I understand that. You're right. Or you know, I think I'm right on this, but let's go weiter. That's called being grown up. Why? What's important? To understand Pshat and Taisis, but you get stuck. You get stuck. Now the Rebbe is describing getting stuck because of your ego. I didn't get stuck because of my ego. I got stuck because of my frustration. In other words, I don't think it was Gaiv. It was, I wanted so much to understand that I got nervous when I didn't. So I told myself I understand. I guess that is ego, but yeah, I guess on some level it's ego, which is fine. I don't mind criticizing something about Gaiv. I got that. I have that problem as well. But the point is, if you're learning to, when a person is involved in any endeavor, there should be humility. People who learn and want to know, learn more. People who learn and want to feel like they know already, don't learn more. Why not? Because it means that what they know already isn't enough. It's a foundational truth. The worst thing that can happen to an intellectual is to develop an ego around their scholarship. Because that's a dead end. That's when you stop. You're afraid. You don't want to know more. You understand? The Rebbe is describing it in Torah, and he's saying what happens is you get so caught up with yourself that you being right becomes more important what the Torah is saying. It's hafach ba v'hafach ba d'cheleba. Of course you understood it wrong. I teach my modem on the internet. I sit in my basement and I record my modem. And God knows, I work hard. I'm teaching my modem from the early years. Tashin Tazvava Maimer. I've been working on this Maimer for days. I was in Pittsburgh for Shabbos. I spent the entire Friday learning this Maimer. I spent hours. And took out the Ayin Ches. And I looked it up. And I recorded it. And I looked it up again. And I'm really not sure if I'm right. Someone come along to me and say, you know, Paltiel, you just made something up, doesn't say anything at all. And it's very possible. Last night I got paranoid. I went back. I looked at Ayin Ches again. No, what I said I think is true. But do I know? It's okay. That's how learning goes. You learn, you understand. And I'm a teacher, so I teach. Tomorrow someone's going to come along and say, you know what, you taught it incorrectly. Go back to the text, look at the words more carefully, and you'll see that you're reading too much into the Rebbe's words, or you're reading too little into the Rebbe's words. Whatever the case is, the healthy way to learn is to be open to that. That makes you better. But when you want to know, or as the Rebbe says it, when you remember that this is God's, you expect to know it completely? You'll never know it completely. The Rebbe used to say, Rashi Sichos, and every once in a while the Rebbe would say, I already discussed this Rashi a few years ago, but you will not hold it against me that I've grown since a few years ago, and maybe now I understand differently than a few years ago because I'm smarter. The Rebbe, that a few years ago, there was a chasam in my smarts. Really, it was a chasam in the Rebbe's smarts. It's you constantly growing. But if you get stuck, if it becomes about you, then it becomes a trap. And that's what he's describing. I'm reading it inside. Page Chavtes, the line but begins with the word tzarich, which is a little bit more than halfway down the page. Occasionally you will lean the idea where you know what is incorrect, that you should be right. So there's three levels. Number one, you boast. Number 2, you do it to be able to say you're great. And number 3, you'll even bend what the truth is to make yourself look correctly. And then he concludes, because I study Torah, I violate the Shulchan Aruch. Now what the Rebbe is trying to say is my preoccupation with Torah makes my Shulchan Aruch less important, or more so. My preoccupation with Torah makes how I understand the halacha more important than what may be written in the Shulchan Aruch, which means the Shulchan Aruch may paskin, but say, well, I see it different. And that's very severe. What are you saying, Maishala?
Saying that that's ego when you then get true.
To serve yourself.
Yeah.
Right. But the way the Rebbe is phrasing it is, you know it's the Eibush, you know it's God's. And if you know it's God's, you know it's bigger than you. You know it's holy. And you believe in Hashem. But you don't believe in Hashem so much that you're going to behave in a way that reflects that, right? What's our maimed about at the moment? Our maimed is about this syndrome, this disease that's called Ganva, Apum, Machtarta, Rachamana, Karya. The thief at the opening to the tunnel prays to God. I'm about to go kill, to steal, and possibly kill. I'm davening to the Eibishter. So I believe in the Eibishter enough to daven to him. But I don't believe in the Eibishter so much to do what he says. He's saying that this applies to a Ben Teda too, not just to a Ganef. I'm learning Teda. I believe it's the Eibishter's. And I value the sacredness of the Teda, but I can't help but feel proud of myself. I can't help but want the cover that it's going to bring me. And I can't help but sometimes bend the Teda to make myself look better. And then he adds another point. Some people study Teda, and because they're learning Teda, they haven't done davening. Long. They're rushing through the davening because they've learned Teda. Right? And what's the claim? What's the claim? You know what's the claim? The claim is that Teda is called Chaya Yelam, eternal life. And Tefillah is called Chaya Yeshua, temporary life. So Chaya Yelam is more important than Chaya Yeshua. You have to better learn Teda and daven very quickly than spend the time learning Teda. And what is our answer? Our answer to that is 2 things. Number 1, in the Yimarish we say, Zman Teda l'chud, Zman Tefillah l'chud. Unless you're in the Madrega of Terasi Nasi, you have to have time to learn, you have to have time to daven. That's number 1. And number 2, how does Chassidus explain Chaya Yeshua? Chassidus doesn't explain Chaya Yeshua. When they say Chaya Yeshua, temporary life, because when I'm davening, I'm asking Hashem for pizza. Today I want pizza, tomorrow I want sushi. So when I'm davening for pizza, it's for right now. But I'm learning Teda, it's for always. In other words, they talk about Chaya Yeshua in terms of I'm davening for things that I need in the physical world. So Chassidus teaches Chaya Yeshua, Machol, not Majeski. That's your last name, not Majeski. Munitz. Today I remember. Tomorrow I'll forget, but today I remember. Yeah? That Chaya Yeshua means you bring the Eibush into the moment. Chaya Eila means you're learning Teda, you go above time. Because in time, Teda is higher than time. Chaya Yeshua means you bring the Eibush into time. So people who refuse to daven b'arichis are, in the Rebbe's words, making a terrible mistake because you have to have Teda and you have to have Tefillah. And Mekoshken, and even more so, because Boninus of Tefillah, they don't have time to contemplate God before davening. So let me stop and talk about this. And let's be honest, this Maimon was said 70 years ago. More than 70 years ago. Ouch. This Maimon was said 73 years ago, this Maimon. 73 years ago. That's a long time ago, 73 years ago. You know how old my father was 73 years ago? He was before the Bar Mitzvah. He was going almost Bar Mitzvah, before the Bar Mitzvah. That's how long ago 73 years ago is. It's a long, long time ago. Today's misnagdim about the firmest people. Let's not kid ourselves. They daven the longest. I don't think this is against misnagdim. This is just saying a truth. If I believe in the Eibishter, and my Torah is connected to the Eibishter, it's impossible because I'm learning Torah, I can't find time. It's impossible because I'm learning Torah, I can't find time to learn Chassidus. It's impossible because I'm learning Torah, I can't find time to think Chassidus without davening. Why? It's the Eibishter's Torah. Right? Like the story with the Chayz and Megareb, which I love to tell. Ich will verstehen. If a person wants to understand Torah, he has to be Mesa Nefesh for it. And the beginning of the Mesilas Nefesh is to daven to the Eibishter. If I'm so busy learning Torah, I don't have time to daven. In other words, I'm so busy learning Torah, I have no time for the Eibishter who's giving me, not who gave me, who's giving me this Torah. There is an inconsistency there, and that's the Rebbe's point. Okay? That you shouldn't think that Ganva, Apum, Machtarta, Rachamana, Karya is to a Ganef. A guy who's a thief, who breaks and enters, he's the hypocrite. It's no, you could be a Mesa Medesh and be him. Not you are, you could be. You could be a Mesa Medesh and be a hypocrite if you boast, if you do it for covet, if you bend the truth. If you bend the truth so much that sometimes you'll do Hepech HaShulchan Aruch because you understand the halacha this way, even though Shulchan Aruch is different. And you are also the same hypocrite if you can't find time to daven because you're so busy learning. And I'm reading on. I need your attention, please. Moreover, you don't engage in all 3 of the prefatory steps that one must do before they daven, which are described in the Likutei Torah, which are, number 1, limit pnimis HaTorah, to study Chassidus. Number 2, Tara, which means to go to the mikveh. And not to go to the mikveh only because you had keri, but it's called Tara, you say, to go to the mikveh, and Echonol Tefillah. And number 3, Tzedakah, Tzedakah, ha? Yeah, coffee is the 4th. The Rebbe's, there's a typographical error, they forgot to put it in, okay? So here you have a very interesting idea. This is the very beginning of the Rebbe's Asiyas. The Rebbe didn't mention this Likutei Torah too many times, as far as I know, but this is in a minor. The Rebbe mentions Likutei Torah. Let's articulate this, and let's be very blunt. This is being said to us. This is being said to us, absolutely to us. It's being said to me. If I learn Torah, and I know that the Torah comes from the Eibishter, in order for me to have the Torah the way I want it, I have to have a relationship with the Eibishter the way I want it. What's my relationship with the Eibishter? To have humility, that I don't boast, that I don't change the Torah to serve my needs. I don't decide what halacha is to make myself look good, and I have time to daven. I have time to daven long. I have time to think chassidus before davening, and I have time to get ready for davening. And the Rebbe says, Lekutei Torah, there's 3 achanos at tefillah. This is a Lekutei Torah Pashas Tov. This is a very, very famous shtickle Lekutei Torah. You may not know about it, but this is what the Rebbe is saying. It is a very famous idea. And by the way, we don't have exclusive rights to this. The Polish have this also. In fact, the Polish are more careful about this than the Chabadikas. In the olden days, Lubavitch Chassid didn't go to mikveh every day. The Bacharim were allowed Shabbos, Monday, and Thursday. Well, in other words, didn't let them go to mikveh more often. In other words, mikveh in Lubavitch was more controlled. The Polish are late for the mikveh yet and dog. The Polish go to mikveh, the Polish go to mikveh more than once a day. You know that there were Polish Chassidim, Emes Chassidim, who went to mikveh Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. You're not allowed to wash. Huh? On Yom Kippur, not Tisha B'Av. Why? It's not washing. It's Machtarta tefillah. But it says in Svarim, it's not from the Baal Shem Tov, but the Alter brings the Lekutei Torah. But I know for a fact, by the Polish, they have it. That one of the Chassidim, either the Baal Shem Tov or the Maggid said that before you daven, you have to do 3 things. You have to learn Zohar, you have to go to the mikveh, and you have to give tzedakah. The 3 parts of preparation of the tefillah. So the Rebbe said, if a person learns Torah, and his understanding is that this Torah comes from the Eibishter, not only has time to learn, not only has time to think Chassidus before not only has time to daven, not only has time to think Chassidus before he davens, he has time to go to the mikveh. He has time to give tzedakah, and he has time to study Zohar. So this is where it breaks. The Polish is, I heard this from Reuben, from, I think Rabbi Reuben told me this. The Polish used to say that it says in Chassidus, that before davening you have to learn Zohar, it means It says the name of the Rishon Rebbe. You heard the Chaim HaKadosh? You heard of him? You heard of him. He was a very, very big tzaddik. He was a very, very big makubal. Upon him, he was from the Mamish Gor Grace. He has a Pirush HaChumash. He has other Svarim also, but I never saw them. It's a beautiful Pirush. When you read the Chaim HaKadosh Pirush HaChumash, I mean, there's 2 people who wrote Pirush HaChumash that are Achreinim that read like Yishonim. They read like Ramban or Even Ezra, the Erechaim and the Kli Yakar. They're really special. I think I know why. When they made this Chumash Mekrois Gedelis, which you have Rashi and Ramban and Even Ezra, which are Yishonim, they included the Kli Yakar. They're very special. They really. Erechaim has the Pirush HaChumash like as if he's Rashi. He's so bold, and he doesn't apologize. You can feel the Ruach HaKodesh in his style of writing, and they look like a very original, incredibly original. Mamish like Yishonim, but I didn't see any of this. You don't see a Peskresa. So there's secrets, but the Perek was a very big Kodesh. And the Polish say,
What the 2?
the Chaim HaKadosh and the Kli Yakar.
Is it our Chaim has the story with his paper?
The what?
When the Arabs, when they took over, is he Bar Yishlaim?
I don't know. I should know, but I don't know.
When the Arabs took over Yishlaim, they wanted to plant to dig a road cemetery. I think they were going to dig it over his paper.
And?
When the bulldozer came, it broke down the first time, so then the Arabs tried to get started, so they got like a ram. So they can ram it. Even if it breaks down, it'll ram. And what happened? They went down, the bulldozer tipped and killed the driver, and then they just gave up.
The interesting story. Okay, maybe. He was a very, very big tzaddik. I mean, there's a whole history with the Chaim HaKadosh. Because in the Hasidic world, there's stories about the Chaim HaKadosh that make him sound like he's greater than the Baal Shem Tov. Mamish. And I didn't believe him. I'm a storyteller. It's one of the things I do. So I collect stories and I repeat stories. And I used to tell these stories. And one day they say, I'm not telling these stories. They're not true. I'll tell you why it's not true. Let me tell you why I believed it wasn't true. Because the Frierdiker Rebbe never mentions him. Never mentions him. And the Polish should make him literally greater than the Baal Shem Tov. So listen. He passed away 8 years before the Baal Shem Tov. Tov Kofi Beis. He was almost the same age, but a little older than the Baal Shem Tov. Then in Tafshin Mem, Tezvav Tammuz is his yard site. And the Rebbe starts speaking about the Chaim HaKadosh. And he says, even though the Frierdiker doesn't tell these stories, but Chassidim tell these stories, and they're probably true. So if you listen to my tapes from 20 years ago, I'm telling about Erechaim. Listen to my tapes from 10 years ago saying, the stories aren't true. Listen from 5 years ago, they became true again. Because I listened to the tape. The Frierdiker Rebbe never talked about it. The Polish have made Erechaim into a tzaddik on the Madrega of the Baal Shem Tov, which is really hard to understand. The Talmud Yaakov Yosef says about the Baal Shem Tov, B'yamav l'haya kamayu, v'acharav l'yia kamayu, v'lulud mistafina, l'fon l'haya kamayu. He says there was nobody like the Baal Shem Tov during his time. There will never be someone like him after him. And if I wasn't afraid, I would say there never was anybody like him before him. The Talmud was a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov's greatness is unimaginable. And to say that someone who lived Bismane was the competition for him is a pele. But the pele should put Erechaim on a pedestal. So their minig is they learn Erechaim. I was Rabbi Berel Weiss's house. He had shiurim all day and all night. 2 o'clock in the morning, learning Erechaim. On Chumash. Erechaim HaKadosh. Erechaim HaKadosh. It's a Heilig HaPirush. So the pele should learn Erechaim. We learn Chassidus. The Lashon is you're supposed to do 3 things before davening. Learn Zohar, go to mikveh, and give tzedakah. So we're Yetzer with Chassidus. The Yetzer with Erechaim HaKadosh. I don't know if you know the video. A guy came to the Rebbe. His name is Brandwein, I think. One of the Einiklach of the Baal Sulam, who was a bit makubal. And he said that he wants that the Rebbe should help him make a kel that the people should stop learning Kabbalah, because learning Kabbalah is going to be preparation for bring Mashiach. So the Rebbe tells him, I'm an Einikel like the Rebbe. And by us it's angenommen that the idea of learning Kabbalah is transferred to learning Chassidus. So I'm not saying you shouldn't make this kel about people learning Kabbalah, but if I join you, I'm going against my grandfather and I cannot do that. Because by us it's angenommen, the limit of Kabbalah today is Chassidus. Chassidus is the Pirush of Kabbalah which we're able to understand, and it's learning Pnimiyas HaTorah, and it's Makar L'Nula, like it says in the Zohar. So B'chalev, it says in the Lekutei Torah before davening, do 3 things. You have to learn Zohar, which we say is the Lekutei Torah, and the Polish say it's Erechaim HaKadosh. You have to go to the mikveh, and the Polish are much more careful about going to the mikveh than us. It's just in their blood, and you have to give tzedakah. And after you do those 3 preparations, you have to daven barichas. And after you daven, you have to learn. And if a person learns Torah, and he believes Torah comes to Eibishter, but he doesn't have time to daven, That is in the level of the Ben Torah, the idea of Ganva, Apum, Machtarta, Rachamana, Karya. That's the Rebbe's argument. Let's continue to read. Page Chav Tes. I'm going to guesstimate 10 lines from the bottom, maybe 11. End of the line. What this means. The person thinks, the reason. I could learn Torah in both. The reason I could learn Torah is to become a god. The reason I could learn Torah, and when I'm looking bad, I'll bend the Torah so I shouldn't look so bad. I'll change the Torah to make myself look good. Or I'll even go against the halacha because I'm here later that the halacha should be different than the Shulchan Aruch because I understood the Gemara. Or I have no time to daven, I have time to I can't look chassidus, I can't get tzedakah, I can go to mikveh. So the Torah is mine. I'm only a chaver man if I come up with new ideas. If I learn Torah and I repeat what says in the Sfarim, I'm only a somebody, and yet you're badam, if I come up with new ideas. So if I can't come up with a new idea, I squeeze it, you know what I'm saying? It's not so bad, I'll squeeze it a little bit. I hold myself back from the things that a yid is supposed to do. Learn chassidus, go to mikveh, give tzedakah, daven bariches, because I'm busy. I gotta do well in the competition for being great and limit the Torah. I need time. I need this time. I should be a creator in Torah, because otherwise, who am I? And the Rebbe says all of this is the Ganva, Apum, Machtarta, Rachamana, Karya of the Ben Torah. This is the standing just like the Ganef. Praise that the Eibush should help do an Aveda, the Ben Torah helps him. Praise that the Eibush should help him use the Torah to serve himself rather than using himself to serve the Torah. That's the Rebbe's point. Gewalt. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. But there's a book, as my uncle says, that's called Kuntres Umayyan. Have you ever heard of Kuntres Umayyan? Right, the essay on folly. I want to rename it the essay on stupidity. Now, of course, that's really very unbecoming. How would nice people say stupid? And of course, the answer to that question is, because nice people can do stupid, you can say stupid. Like the Yiddish, Zayn, Megman, Zogen, Tarnish. You can be an idiot, but you shouldn't say the word. It's not a nice word. The word folly is so stupid would work. It's a pamphlet on stupidity. The Kuntres Umayyan is a very unusual mimer. It's very unusual. And the Rebbe Rashab obviously built it from Rabbi before, but I don't know from where. It goes on one theme. It goes on the theme of shtus, of stupidity, which is a little bit tied into Basi Lagani, because the Basi Lagani has 3 prokim on shtus. And how does the Kuntres work? The Rebbe Rashab starts off with a foundation. You want to live your life logically or illogically? You want to live your life reasonably or unreasonably? Meaning, he starts off with a supposition that this is not about bittul, it's not about Mesiras Nefesh, it's not about the Eibush, it's about me. What kind of life do you want to live? Do you want to live a life that is higher and more meaningful, or do you want to live a life that's emptier and less meaningful? Logic says you should live a life that's more meaningful. Does that make sense? So then the Rebbe Rashab, okay, let's talk about it. If you could enjoy good food, if you could enjoy good music, but you can't have both, what are you going to choose?
Food. Oh, you just say good? I mean, will I get food regardless?
Of course.
If I got music, will I get
Yeah. Good food or good music. So if you are a mensch, you'll choose good music because it's a higher pleasure. If you can enjoy good music, or you could enjoy the study of human nature, of psychology, and then in the Maimonim, the Chushim are lower than the Midas. In other words, the 5 senses, the arts, are lesser pleasure than the pleasure of psychology. What would you choose? You would choose a higher pleasure, a deeper pleasure. And the higher, deeper pleasure is the study of psychology. You understand, many people choose the former. The good food. And the whole point of the Rebbe Rashab is that that's just to prioritize a lower pleasure when you can choose a higher and a finer pleasure simply because it's harder and more subtle. It's just, that's the foundation of the Kodesh. And then he moves on. If you could enjoy a good study of psychology or an abstract idea, even a physical idea, let alone a philosophical idea, let alone a mystical idea of Torah, and you choose the psychology over the Chochmas HaTorah, you're a fool. And then if you can choose Torah for the Mitzvah HaTorah, that probably works. So the whole Kodesh HaBayin is predicated on a foundational idea. What makes sense? And it makes sense for a person to maximize himself. It makes sense for a person to get the most out of himself. And a person who chooses instead to be a chiller, it's stupid. Why? It's empty. It's meaningless. It's underachieving. It's under-respecting and undervaluing self. That's the aside of the Kodesh HaBayin. Now, a lot of people Kodesh HaBayin don't like it. I know people who are professional chillers, nice guys, but they love to sit around and schmooze and waste time. They just love to do it. And to them, if you don't know how to sit around and waste time and chill, there's something wrong with you. Something profoundly, deeply wrong. You have to be able to relax. Now, there's a place for it. But when it becomes an entity unto itself, that's exactly what the Rebbe Rashab is talking about. Of course, you can sit around and schmooze and waste your time. But that's not what a person is. For that, the Eibush that created pandas, giant pandas, or wombats, or koala bears, these big, burly chevre who eat lots and lots of leaves and they spend their entire life digesting their food. You know what a giant panda is? It's a metabolization nightmare. They eat food that their stomachs are not meant to eat. Nobody understands how such a thing could have happened. You're not allowed to use the word evolution because that's a big aveda. No one knows how giant pandas exist. Giant pandas are bears. Bears are supposed to eat meat.
They do occasionally
But they're not fast enough to hunt. So they're eating haravis, bamboos. They're eating, and they eat an enormous volume of food and get very little nutrition out of it. They waste, most of it comes out. They're very, in other words, they're inefficient machines, and there are monkeys like that. Even the elephant to some extent is like that. The animals that know how to use the grass are the ones that are kosher. With the complex stomachs, they chew, grass and leaves are very hard to digest because they have defenses against being eaten. So they sit around the whole day and digest food. But a human being is not a panda. We can cook our food, we can curate, we can do things to our food to make it better, easier to digest. We can eat healthier food. And a human being is meant to use his mind, to use his heart, to use his senses. And I'm sitting around, I'm lounging. It's fun. Relax, there's plenty of time. Of course you do. But the Rebbe Rashab said, on balance, if you could be studying something deep that develops your mind and makes you a greater human being, or sitting around in a lounge chair, what is logical? Again, you may disagree with the Rebbe Rashab. A lot of people, I have people that I know personally who are very bothered by people who don't sit around a whole Shabbos and schmooze. I can't do it. 2 hours is my maximum. Shabbos, 2 hours also a lot. 2 hours is a long time to sit around and talk. But you gotta get up and do something. What are you so nervous about? Sit down, enjoy yourself, have another piece of cake. And the argument is you have to be able to relax, you have to be able to enjoy life. And the tendency is you're supposed to live life. And the Kuntas of Mayan challenges every person, every minute, every day, and says, what is the most logical thing to do right now? And the most logical thing to use the time productively. And productively is not sitting around and schmoozing. Productively means studying, creating, developing your mind, your heart, your sense of becoming a bigger and better person. So the whole foundation of the Kuntas of Mayan is shtusim. What's logical and what's illogical based on this foundational idea. And again, a lot of people get very nervous with the first Maimon Kuntas of Mayan because it's a huge Musa sefer. And we live in consumeristic America. We live in a society that's all about pleasure. And the whole point of the Kuntas of Mayan is you can have pleasure. It's not asr, but it's shtus. It's shtus. If you can study Chochmah and you're busy studying whatever it is, it's shtus. You're selling yourself short. That's the idea. That's the idea. That's the logic. So the Kuntas of Mayan is, I think it's 29 Maimonim. Something like that. It's quite big. Kuntas of Mayan. And it has themes. The first chunk deals with taivas, with pleasures. And the Kuntas of Mayan is saying, the Kuntas of Mayan is not saying don't have pleasure. The Kuntas of Mayan is saying choose which pleasure you want to have. After he goes through this whole thesis on how it's logical to be involved in something higher rather than being involved in something lower, he moves on to the shtusim of very simple ones. That no one's going to see you, that no one's going to catch you, that as long as you get away with it, it's okay. Simple things like that. When he finishes with those, his 2 Maimonim on the shtusim of a benteda. Maimonim Tezvav and Tezayin deal with the shtus of Tabat Chochem. A person who's actually sophisticated, he's actually intelligent, and uses his time and is engaged with higher pursuits because he doesn't want to be a shaykh, he doesn't want to be a fool. But in his world, in other words, he wants to be a more human being in the image of God. So he uses his mind to pursue knowledge rather than to just find another restaurant to eat at and taste their food and watch another movie and read another book. All wonderful things, maybe even permitted things, but really that's what Hashem left Gan Eden for. So this person is into it. But even the Bentena, that's what the Rebbe is speaking to here, the shtus of the Bentena. So you have machazik teva la'atzmei, he thinks highly of himself, matzdik es atzmei, then you start giving excuses for yourself, and then you start slipping. You have to always grow. And the moment you start liking yourself, you start going backwards. Now that doesn't mean you shouldn't like yourself. It means you should never be, the Rebbe says, I give you my guarantee, I will never be satisfied. How many times did the Rebbe say that? I give you my guarantee. This idea of never being satisfied is not meant to make you feel bad. It's meant to make you feel like a person. A person needs to move and grow. And when we become satisfied, we're going backwards. I read this in a book years and years ago. I didn't want to say it, but I can't help myself but say it. There was a guy named Albert Einstein. You heard of him, Islam, a pretty famous fellow. Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein is one of the most important contributors to physics in the history of mankind. Very smart guy. He's in the class with Newton, Mamish, and Galileo. That's how important he is.
Created gravity.
Nobody created gravity. He interpreted. He created a new interpretation of gravity, and he has special relativity and general relativity, enormous, great chedushim that he came up with. But in their books, they write that all of the great. He was born, I think, in 1879. Someone's going to look it up and tell me. 1879. His miracle year was 1905. He was 26 years old. That's when he made 3 of his papers, and then another year, 1915, he made what's called the theory of gravitation. I think that was the last one. But the theory of light. 1879. So in 1905, he was 26 years old. And he was working as a clerk in a patent office, which took 1/1,000,000th of his brain. So a whole day, he was signing patents. You know what I mean? He was like a secretary. He came in. Albert Einstein was stamping people's, so you own the patent and nobody else can make this particular shaped donut. Or whatever, he worked in the patent office. If anybody had a brainless job for a guy like this, he had a whole day to think. He came with these brilliant ideas. So they write about Albert Einstein that during his lifetime, people used his contributions to science to take it to the next level, and he couldn't keep up with them. And they write that during his lifetime, people took his ideas, developed them further, and he was stuck. He couldn't go along with it. Things changed during his lifetime. I don't know, quantum theory and random theory. There's a lot of really weird things in science that are very hard to understand. I think they're impossible to imagine. They're pure mathematics, but the order within chance. How does that work? The order within chance, but that's a real thing. And the word that they say is that when Albert Einstein was young, there were questions that physicists had no answers. And the great thinkers of the late 20th, 19th century, the 1800s, had taken physics very far in terms of electricity, in terms of light, in terms of energy, and all these kinds of things. And they were stuck. And it took a new mind to come up with the answers to those questions. Because when you're invested, the minute your ego is a part of your learning, you stop moving. He didn't have an ego yet. But once he developed his own ego, the great Albert Einstein became stuck by his own young ideas. So when he was younger, he developed new ones. So the Rebbe's point always is stay young. Stay young really means stay humble. And stay young and stay humble really means stay hungry. I never have enough knowledge. I always want more. And it's very hard to do, especially if you're really, really, really smart. Smart like Einstein. You have to say, no, I don't know enough. I want to know more. And the Rebbe Rashab, the Kuntas of Mayan, would argue that anything to the contrary is shtus. It's foolish. I have a mind. Why am I settling and saying, okay, I know enough? I find it very intriguing when people tell you, and Chassidus says it, that the biggest balagaiva in the world are professors. It doesn't make sense to me. Because if you're an intellectual, you're so busy pursuing new knowledge, what can you do for ego? And the answer is, when you become that guy, you're not pursuing new knowledge. You're sustaining your ego, your identity, which is the opposite of your entire life's mission, which is to enhance knowledge. So if you find a professor who's 80, who's humble, it's the pshat. He's still curious. He's still hungry. When you find a professor who's 25, who's a megalomaniac, when he's done, I know enough. Now I'm going to be a teacher. Now I'm going to share with the world my knowledge. So the Rebbe, in Torah, when you have to add to that whole mix, one more detail. The Eibishter gave us the Torah. When we don't use the Torah, when the Eibishter wishes for us to use the Torah, we're guilty of Ganva, Apum, Machtarta, Rachamana, Karya. And I wanted to teach more. But I didn't finish. So I'm going to stop right now. I'm going to write a list of questions. And I'm not going to give them to you. Now, tomorrow is Thursday, so we do tefillah. So Monday morning, I'm going to continue learning this inside. Then we'll do the questions. You understand? Then we'll do the questions. And I've avoided talking about the key point of this moment until now. And that's the point of Amunah. We will do that at the beginning of next week. I thank you all.